All right. We're good?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. Today is sponsored by Chaim and Ariel Rosner, B'schus Refuah Shlema for Ephraim ben Shifra. Thank you very much to the Rosners. We are sitting with a diminished crowd tonight. Diminished crowd because it is Nittelnacht. So Nittelnacht is a predominantly celebrated in Hasidic communities. It was established somewhere in the mid to late 1600s. I think there was an early reference in a sefer called by Rabbi Bachrach that indicates that there was a concern about Jews going out during on the night of the 24th, because it was a night that the Christians would be all riled up, and as a result of them being all riled up, Jews were in danger, and so therefore to be able to keep everybody at home, the suggestion was to not learn. And then from there developed customs of people playing cards or chess or doing other things, and Chinese food, all this, everything that comes out as a result of all that, and other rationales for the custom also exist, such as the concern that learning on somebody's yahrzeit is a zechus. And so therefore, if we're learning on the night of the Yashki's yahrzeit, then potentially we're helping him as his chus. The issue is it's not his yahrzeit, it's allegedly his birthday. His yahrzeit, I think, if I understand the Christian traditions, is that he dies on Easter or something, and then he comes back to life. He dies on Good Friday. I don't know, but in any event, that wouldn't be today. In any event, but it is a very important holiday for non-Jews, and therefore the custom has developed that Jews should not participate in being happy and joyous on the occasion, and so therefore, as a result, the custom developed to avoid. It was really became something that was well practiced because the Baal Shem Tov taught that it was an appropriate custom, and so amongst many of the Hasidim and our host congregation of Kahal Yereim amongst them would be those that would avoid learning. I myself, it's Daf Yomi, and there's no breaks in Daf Yomi, even on Yom Kippur, even on Tisha B'Av, and so we are here this evening with the diminished crowd. And we are continuing with our Gemara on Daf Hey Amud Aleph on 5a, probably 1, right? If I take a look and see, yeah, probably 5a1 towards the end of that 5a1 section, and we're at the sort of the top quarter of the page. We were discussing what qualifies somebody to be a judge, and we had mentioned that if somebody was in the category of mumche l'rabim, meaning that they were well regarded and known as being an expert in cases and judgment. So then Rav Acha Brei Rav Ika said that it was said that a mumche l'rabim, Rav Nachman said he was one, Rav Chia said that he was one, that they could judge even by themselves. And the rationale for that is, this is according to the Ran, according to the opinion that says that only one judge is required. Remember, we had this argument earlier on whether you needed 3 judges for simple cases of loans and basic business deals, whether you needed 3 judges for that. And then the rabbi said, well, you don't need to have experts because it's hard to find experts, so therefore we allowed you to have regular judges. Or according to the other opinion that says that you really only need 1 judge, and you don't need and they don't even need to be experts. But
1 expert.
Well, we said that's the ideal, right? Oh. The way we're going to say that since we're saying no, we're not going to hold of Eruv Parshios, so therefore the requirement doesn't require any 3 judges, and it doesn't require them to be experts either. The problem that we had is that you have 3 judges that are if you have 1 judge and he's not an expert, everything's going to get messed up. So therefore, the Gemara had told us a couple of days ago that we should have 3 judges. That way, we're less likely to get 3 people who don't know what they're talking about. Now, this Gemara comes and says the other way to solve that problem is that if you are an expert, that's what we said yesterday, if you're an expert, then 1 judge by himself is fine as well, because 1 expert isn't going to make mistakes either. And so that's what we said. And then we asked the question, what is the qualifications of an expert? And we came up with 3 potential qualifications. 1, that you learned all the laws. Number 2, that you have a certain amount of wisdom to be able to apply those laws. And then number 3, you need to ask permission from the local Jewish government authority. The Reish Galusa was the head of the and I don't know what an exilarch is, but that's some kind of fancy word. It was referring to the leadership that was actually from Shevet Yehuda, right? It was Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and that lineage that was ruling the Jewish community in Bavel. And then there was another group of Rabbanim that were descended from Hillel, right? Of course, he's not from Shevet Yehuda, but Hillel, was he? Now I'm going to have to look that up. Hillel and his descendants were ruling in Eretz Yisrael. That was the lineage of the Nesiim versus the lineage of the Reish Galusa, Bavel versus Eretz Yisrael. Now, there are various Gemaras that talk about the relation, that what was the quality of the leadership of the Reish Galusa and the quality of the leadership of the Nesiim. It seems that in Eretz Yisrael, the Nesiim themselves had a certain amount of respect for Jewish law and were ruling according to Jewish law. It also seems that at various points during the Jewish the time that they were in Bavel, that the Reish Galusa's office wasn't always up to snuff. At different times, the Reish Galusa's office was better than at other times. So, not always was the Reish Galusa's authority, was it something that everybody in Bavel was happy with? But we'll just keep that in mind as we have our discussion, as we're going to go through our Gemara today. So, Amarav, this is where we're up to. Amarav, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines down. Amarav, Haiman de boy lemedon dina. If somebody wants to be a judge, v'ita mi boy lifter, and the other thing that he wants to do is that if he makes a mistake, he doesn't want to be held responsible. That was what we talked about at the end of the Gemara yesterday. The consideration that not only do you have the ability to be a judge, but what if you make a mistake, right? If you make a mistake and it's your fault, so then the Torah can say you're a judge. That's fine. Well, what does that mean that you're a judge? It means that the court case is final. So if Reuven says Shimon owes Shimon money, so then Reuven has to pay Shimon. Okay, that's done. Now it turns out that the judge made a mistake. Well, does Shimon have to repay Reuven back? No, because the court case was final. The court case was valid. Well, then Reuven's out money. That's not fair. The judge has to pay him back, potentially. And that's what we're going to be discussing, the parameters of that. The judge might have to be the one who pays him back.
Is there an appeals process in Jewish court?
No.
So it's final.
That's pretty done. Yeah, that's correct. Pretty finalized. Now, if that is the case, what if I want to be indemnified, right? That's the word, to protect yourself, right? To get yourself, so you're not financially responsible. There is a method for being able to be held non-financially responsible, and that is lishkol reshusa mi Reish Galusa. You've got to get permission to be a judge from the Reish Galusa. Now, why does that make any difference? Because once you get permission from the Reish Galusa, he has the authority. As we're going to see, his authority comes from a combination of being given that authority by the Persian leadership that they were living under at the time, and also the authority comes from the fact that halachically a Beis Din has the ability of what we've discussed in the past, hefker Beis Din hefker. A Beis Din can say, even though legally speaking that person owes you money, we're not going to make him pay. And so for the sake of protecting judges, Reish Galusa would have created a exempting sort of a procedure so that if you are asking permission and you become a certified judge from the Reish Galusa, so then you are protected from being financially responsible for your errors.
So who's
right?
going to pay?
So then nobody's going to pay back. The guy who loses, he's the one who loses. He went to a court case, had a court case, they judged him, somebody made a mistake, he's the one, he's out, right? Now we have, laws like that in, the government and things like that, right? You have, in the United States, famously, Trump is not able to be sued or, held accountable for certain things that he did as president because there's rules restricting prosecution of crimes while you are a government official or things that you did as a government official. You can't be sued, and I think it's probably the case in Canada also. If I'm a government official, let's say a good one that just came up was Ford made the rule that they're removing bike lanes. So what if somebody gets hurt now as a result of the fact that there's no bike lane on the street? So can you sue the government saying it's your fault? Because if there was a bike lane, I wouldn't have gotten hurt. So they passed a law saying you can't sue us. right? So there you are, the government saying we are protected financially. So it's the same kind of idea.
Do we have El Reish Galusa in Toronto still?
No, Reish Galusa was something that was in Bavel, and it has expired. Right, there was in
This was the same also for the 71 judges.
the 71 judges always were only in Eretz Yisrael. So that only existed in Eretz Yisrael, and even we're going to see the 23 judges that requires Eretz Yisrael. Remember that we said in the Mishnah that the 23 judges courts have to be officially established by the Sanhedrin themselves. This is specifically for financial matters.
So the Beis Din here can't be sued if they properly.
So
There's another.
correct. The Beis Din here would protect themselves from, and what they would do is they would make, but what they're going to use a different procedure, right? The procedure that they're going to use in this Beis Din in Toronto is they're going to make you sign a document, right? You're going to sign a waiver. That is this Gemara is saying even without the waiver. Right? If I show up and I go to a court and the Reish Galusa gave me permission, I don't need to get a waiver from the people. Now, this is what our Beis Din, right? Correct. The Reish Galusa basically says that's it. He has the right to judge. Now, a Beis Din, the waiver is what we require, because we tell everybody if you're coming to this court, you are going to abide by whatever decision the court makes. You're not going to hold anybody liable for the result of the decision, and you're going to follow it and all of those kinds. And you waive your right to, in a court case outside of this Beis Din, etc.
Who assigns the 71 judges?
How are the 71 judges picked? Wait till we get to there.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. V'chein amar Shmuel. Shmuel says also, Lishko Rishus Mebei Reish Galusa. What you got to do is you got to get permission from the Reish Galusa. Pshita. Now, here's what's obvious. Mehacha lahacha. If you are going to be a judge in Babylonia, so then getting permission from the Reish Galusa is great. Umehasam lahasam. If you are going to be a judge in Eretz Yisrael, getting rishus from the Nasi, that is also great. Umehacha lahasam mahani. Also, it was that if you got permission to be a judge from the Reish Galusa, then you could go be a judge in Eretz Yisrael. That was also okay. Dehacha shevet v'hasam mechokek, because the level of leadership was in the Reish Galusa was a higher level of rule than the ruling that was in Eretz Yisrael. Kidatanya, as we learned in a brisa, lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda, that the staff, the scepter of leadership, never will leave the tribe of Judah. Elu Reishe Golios Shebabavel. That pasuk refers to the heads of the Babylonian Jewish community in Bavel. Sherodin es Yisrael b'shevet, because they have authority. They can hit they have given authority, and the Rashi says that they were given authority by the Persian kings, right? That they are able to punish and to hold be responsible for the adjudication of legal cases in the Jewish community. Since they were given that legal right, the Reish Galusa has ultimate authority. Umechokek mi bein rod glove, and Torah scholars from your offspring, Elu b'nei banav shel Hillel, that refers to the children of Hillel, right? He was the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael. And Shemalamdim Torah Barabim, because he was a public Torah scholar who taught Torah. So basically, probably similar to what we have in Toronto, he was the big rabbi who led the community and everybody followed what he said. But his authority came from the fact that he was a big Torah scholar and the fact that he was teaching Torah, not from the fact that the government officially gave him the title of governor of Toronto. Right? If the provincial government said we officially recognize Rabbi so and so as the mayor of the Jewish community of Toronto, and he has the authority to make bylaws and to establish fines, and that would be a different level of leadership than it would be if we were, talking about just being but being the rabbi, the leader, based on the fact that he's teaching Torah. Now, the question therefore is, Mehasam lahakamai. Let's say a person is a judge in Eretz Yisrael. He gets permission from the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, and then he moves to Bavel, and he wants to be a judge in Bavel. Can that work? So Tashma, come and listen. To Rabbi bar Chana, Rabbi the son of Chana, Don Dina Vita'a. He was a judge, and he made a mistake. Also l'kami de Rabbi Chia. So he came before Rabbi Chia. Amar lei. And he said to him, I kabluch alayhu lo tishalim. Ve'ilo zil shlim. He says, if they had, this is the waiver, right? If they had signed a waiver, essentially, if they had taken upon themselves and accepted you as the final decisor of the matter, then you don't have to pay because they agreed. But if not, then you've got to pay. You are not licensed to be a judge here in Babylonia. You only have your licenses in Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, that you've come here, you're not automatically protected. So therefore, if you started your court case with, do you sign a waiver and officially designate me as the judge that you won't hold me responsible, then you're fine. If not. Now, the Rabbi Bar Chana, Reshusa Hava Nakit, we saw that Rabbi Bar Chana had taken permission to be a judge. So that shows us that despite the fact that you got permission in Eretz Yisrael, when you move to Bavel, that permission does not continue. So that's what we're going to see from here. Velo mahani. Wait a second. Is that true? Is that it doesn't work? Rabba bar Rav Huna. What about the story of Rabba bar Rav Huna? Kihava minsi behadi debe reish galusa. So he was in a fight with the Reish Galusa. This is why I gave the introduction that the Reish Galusa was not always well respected. All the rabbis didn't like everything the Reish Galusa was doing, right? So they were a secular authority as much as they were a religious authority, or maybe more so a secular authority. So Rav Huna, the son of Rabba bar Rav Huna, Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, was in some kind of a disagreement with the Reish Galusa, and they were pestering him, and he said, Omar, lav minaychu nikitna reshusa. Nikitna reshusa me Abba Mari. So he says, I didn't get permission to be a judge or a rabbi from you. You have no authority over me. I have permission to be a rabbi from Abba Mari. There's politics back then too. And Abba Mari me Rav. And Abba Mari got his permission from Rav. V'Rav me Rabbi Chia. And Rav got his permission from Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia me Rabbi. And Rabbi Chia got his from no less than Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the author of the Mishnah himself. My lineage is way better than yours. And so therefore, who are you to tell me what to do? That was essentially what he told them. Now,
that's going against the formalities.
That's correct. And so what they're trying to point out is that permission in Eretz Yisrael is effective even if the local authority, the Reish Galusa, is in a fight with you. Right? So it sounds like he's saying, I have my own authority despite your being upset at me or telling me that I can't be a judge. So the answer is, so he says, no, he really wasn't giving them a valid claim. He was just in an argument, and that's the kind of thing that you say. When you're in an argument, it wasn't of legal binding, there wasn't legal value to that statement, right? It wasn't true that he had the right to judge without the Reish Galusa's permission. He was just informing them, I have my own authority too.
Reish Galusa, that's one person or a group?
The Reish Galusa was one person. But he had a whole household.
Individual,
probably a very wealthy individual, and yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right, and
secular rich, huh?
and connected to the Persian authorities,
yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Now, okay, now the question is, Rabbi Bar Chana, we said that he got permission in Eretz Yisrael, moved to Babylonia, and then he was told that his permission in Eretz Yisrael had no validity. So then what was the reason why he got the permission in Eretz Yisrael? Right? Ultimately, it didn't help him, right? It's like getting a degree in something that doesn't help you. Why did he go get the degree if then he came back to Babylonia? It didn't help him. So the answer is, La'ayoros ha'omdim al ha'gvulin. The answer is that he intended to be a judge in border cities. There were cities that were close between Eretz Yisrael and Babylonia, and apparently the empire, the connection between Babylonia to Israel, right? It wasn't like Babylonia and Persia right now is where Iraq and Iran is, and you've got a whole country of Syria in between Israel and that area. The answer is no. Clearly, the Babylonian theater of influence went all the way over into Syria and ultimately to the north of where Eretz Yisrael was. So therefore, those cities that were on the border in Babylonia still were under the authority and control of the Israeli. They were probably closer to the center of the Israeli rabbinate than they were to the Babylonian one. So therefore, when he got permission to judge cases, he was intending to judge cases on those border cities. But then he was also then wound up further in Babylonia, and it didn't apply there. Okay, so now, my Reshusa. So what is this permission that needs to be given? Okay, so or really the question is about Rabbi Bar Chana specifically. What was the story? Sorry, what did I say? Did I say the right person? Rabbi Bar Chana. Yeah, Rabbi Bar Chana. what permission did he get? What's his story? Basically, what's the background story? What happened is Rabbi Bar Chana was going to Bavel. Okay, he was in Eretz Yisrael, he was learning, and then it's time for me to go. He's going to Babylonia. Amar le Rabbi Chia le Rabbi. So Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi, Ben Achi Yored leBavel. My nephew, right, the son of my brother, is going to Bavel. So he's saying Yore, can he teach halachos of prohibitions, tell somebody if something's kosher, if their pots are kosher, can you do that? And he said, Yora, yes, he can. Because basically he's certifying that he is knowledgeable enough to be a rabbi, right? Yadin, can he judge monetary cases? Yadin, yes, he can. Yatir bechoros, can he make firstborn animals permissible? Well, I'll hold on to that one, explain that. Yatir, yes, he can. Okay, so what's the big deal about firstborn animals? So the Torah tells us that a firstborn kosher animal is sanctified, and it has to be brought as a sacrifice to the Beis Hamikdash. If the animal develops a blemish, then it's given to the Kohen and can be used. It can be eaten. Now, you need to be able to certify that a blemish that's on the animal is in fact a permanent blemish, and it's not just something that's a scratch on it and it's going to heal and go away. So you have to have some kind of knowledge and awareness of the halachos that are involved in these blemishes to be able to determine, is this one that disqualifies the animal from being a sacrifice or not? So that was the certification that was the third level of certification that he was seeking, and it was important because the times that they were living in, this is after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, it's not as though these animals, right, an animal that had no blemish was simply sitting around with doing nothing, right? They couldn't do anything with it until eventually something might happen to the animal and then it would develop a blemish, at which point they could use it. So his ability to instruct people and tell them, yes, this animal has a blemish was very important. So that was the third level of court cases that he was certified to teach. Till this day, right, when you go get smicha, right, they call it Yora Yora and Yodin Yodin from this Gemara, right? Why the double language? Because this is from this Gemara, Yora Yora Yodin. But now the way the Gemara sounds, or at least the way I read it, is it's a question and answer, right? Yora, can he teach? Yora, yeah, he can. Yodin, can he judge? Yes, he can judge. Okay. Now, Ki haba nachis Rav leBavel. Now, when Rav was going down to Babylonia, who happens to be his cousin, who is Rabbi Bar Chana's cousin, Amar le Rabbi Chia le Rabbi. Rabbi Chia came to Rabbi again, and he said, Ben Achosi Yorei leBavel. My sister's son is going to Babylonia. Yora, can he tell you about prohibitions and kosher food and all that stuff? Yora, yes he can. Yadin, can he be a judge? Yadin, yes he can. Yatir bechoros, can he permit firstborn animals? Al yatir, no, he cannot. Oh, so now the question is going to be, why not? What was wrong with Rav, who we know is when we just read through the lineage that when who was it that was in a fight with the Reish Galusa, right? Who went back through all the leaders of the Reish Galusa. Rav was the bigger, seems to be somebody who was a larger, individual, was well known for his stature. Why was he prohibited from getting involved in Bechoros? So Maishna Lamar de Kakari ben. So the first question is Maishna Lamar de Kakari ben Achi or Maishna Lamar de Kakari ben Achosi. So he says, first of all, why is it that Rabbi Chia refers to one as the son of his brother, and he refers to Rav as the son of his sister? Why the change in titles? V'chite mahachi havan. You're going to say hachava maisa. The answer is because that's how it was. One was the son of his brother, and one was the son of his sister. V'amar mar Evo. Amarmar, but didn't we say Evo v'chana v'shila umarta Rabbi Chia kuluhu b'nei Abba bar Acha karsula mikafri. Says, ready for the family tree? Evo, Chana, these are all men's names. Chana is a man's name. Sheila, Marta, and Rabbi Chia. They were all the children of a fellow named Abba bar Acha karsula, right, from a place called Kafri. Okay. Rav bar Achuha dehava bar Achte, Rabba bar Chana bar Achuha delav bar Achte. So what happens is, what their point is they're making is that Rav is the son of one of his brothers, and Rabbi is the son of one of his other brothers. So why is it that he refers to one as the son of his sister? So the answer is, he had one brother who was the son of his brother. He had one nephew who was the son of his brother, and then he had another nephew who was the son of his brother who was married to his sister. Now that sounds weird. How is a brother married to a sister? The answer is that his father, right, had all of these sons, right, and then his wife died. Meanwhile, there's a story of a lovely lady who had a daughter of her own, right? And then, we got the reference anyway. But then his mother, right? The lady met this fellow, and they got married together, right? And then they had a son, Reb Chia. So that means Reb Chia has all of these brothers from the same father, and he has a sister from the same mother. But all of his brothers from the same father are not related to his sister.
Are they half related?
They are not, because he, Reb Chia, is half related to the sister, and he's half related to the brothers. The brothers were the sons of Reb Chia's father and his first wife. The sister is the daughter of Reb Chia's mother and her first husband.
Oh, prior to marriage.
Prior to marriage. Reb Chia, exactly. You see my reference? You got it there. Then Reb Chia, right? Reb Chia then is the product of the two of them, right? And now he is half brother and half sister. They got married together, which is perfectly fine because the brothers and the sisters are not related to each other, and they have a child. So therefore, when he refers to one, he calls one is the son of my brother, the other one is the son of my sister, because he was also the son of his brother and sister. So that was a little bit of a bigger deal. So he mentioned that this is the one that's the son of my sister, right? To distinguish. That's one answer. V'bois ema, or else if you want, al shem chachmaso. Rav was called the son of his sister because he was the smarter one, right? Because Dichsiv, the pasuk says, "And more lechachma achosi at." You should tell wisdom, you are my sister. How well should you know your wisdom? As well as you know your sister. Al yatir bechoros. So at yatir. So yatir bechoros. And the question is, if he's the wiser one, then why isn't he given permission to permit the firstborn animals? Right? Makes sense. Why was he told no? Is al yatir my taima? If you're going to tell me it's because he wasn't as smart as Rabba was, hakam rinan dechakim tuva. We said no, he was really smart. He should have been able to do it. Maybe he wasn't an expert in that one area of halacha, right? He could have been very smart, but just not very good at that one thing. Rav said, Rav said about himself, I spent 18 months being with a shepherd, right? Studying. I went into the agricultural industry, and I studied for 18 months to learn all there is to know about veterinary medicine, to find out what is a good mum, what is not a mum, right? So he went and he studied, he was expert at it.
Immersive learning.
Right, exactly. He did it, and that's it, right? Apprenticeship. Ella, so rather, what was the reason why they said he couldn't be somebody permit Bechoros? Lachlok lo kavod l'Rabba bar Chana. The answer is because they wanted to give honor to his cousin, Rabba bar Chana. Because if Rav had shown up, he would have been the smarter one. He would have been the one that was more knowledgeable in everything. And everybody in Babylonia would have said, Rav, you're the most amazing thing. And they would have ignored Rabbi Bar Chana because he was secondary. So therefore, Rabbi made a point of giving Rabbi Bar Chana an extra smicha so that people would recognize this too is a great Torah scholar. And Rav, it would have been, right, they didn't give him that honor. So therefore, since he was therefore his expertise or the what do you call it? I guess the honor that they would give in Rav would have been automatic. He didn't need to go out of his way to certify him and everything for everybody to recognize his genius. So it was unnecessary. V'boy seima, or else I'll give you another potential answer. Mishum ha gufei de Rav b'kiyah mumumi tvei v'shari mumi. He says, I'll tell you another reason why potentially he didn't certify Rav. He says he was such an expert at all of the blemishes. He was too good. And so therefore, there would be blemishes that to the regular average person, they would look at this and go, that is not a mum. And he'd look at it and say, yes, it is. Oh, well, people would say, well, I didn't realize that was a mum. And then they'd go home, de lo yadi inshi, people would not know what exactly it was that Rav saw that made him decide that this animal was permissible. The amriki haigavna shara Rav. And then they would go home, see a similar thing in their own animals, and not go ask a question from the rabbi and say, oh, I know, the rabbi told me this exact same case, and permit animals for themselves without recognizing that Rav saw something very unique and special in this wound that they're not seeing. And then they would permit it without asking. So therefore, also the meshri mum over. So they would make a mistake and they would permit an animal that had a blemish that was not permanent. So he was too good. That was the concern.
I thought either way they had to give the animal either to the rabbi or to the temple.
No, well they could if he was a Kohen, right? And this is especially if a Kohen was the owner of the animal in the first place. They could use it themselves, right?
Okay, so the Kohen, if it's not a Kohen, which is the other 90%.
Then you could probably find a Kohen to give it to.
Okay, and that would be
Even
more
still, and that would be
beneficial
fine.
than giving it to the temple in their eyes.
Sorry?
Would that be more beneficial in their eyes? Because you're still giving it away.
Well, it's better than it's sitting and eating and doing nothing right now, right?
Okay, so you don't have to take care of it. Okay, so there's a win there.
Okay, so now, Yoreh, so he asked the question, can he tell something is in halacha, is that good or not? Yoreh, yes he can. So, Igomir, well, 1 second. If the guy is well learned, so then Rishus Olamali, when it comes, fine, I understand the monetary cases, he's got to ask permission. Why is it that when you're talking about whether something's kosher or not kosher, why do you need to ask permission? He either knows the halacha or he doesn't, right? Those halachas are either permissible or not. So the answer is, why does he have to ask permission? So the answer is, Mishum Maisa Shehaya, because there was a story that happened. And there's always a story, then after that, you have to ask permission. Detanya, we learn in a brisa. Pamachas, one time. Halach Rebbe lemakom echad. Rebbe went to a certain place. V'ra b'nei adam shemigavlin isosehem betuma. And he saw that there were people that they were kneading their dough, and they were not being careful about the laws of purity when they were kneading their dough. Amar lehem, he said to them, why are you not being careful? And everything is tamei here. Amru lo, so they said to him, Talmid echad balakan. There was a rabbinic student that came here once, v'hora lanu, and he taught us, mei bitzoyim ein machshirin. He said that swamp water does not transfer tuma, right? Water is usually a vehicle through which tuma can be transferred. And this rabbi told us that marsh water doesn't count. So therefore, we've got our water comes from the marshes, and probably they cleaned it out or whatever it was in marsh water, and we use that as our dough, and therefore tuma does not matter. But that's not the halacha. It's not true. Vehu, what did the rabbi really say? Me beitzim darash lahu. He said eggs. If you bake with eggs, eggs do not transfer. There are 7 liquids that transfer impurity. The way to remember it is you remember Yad Shchat Dam. It's yayin, it's wine, blood, yayin dam. Shchat is shemen, is oil. Ches is chalav, is milk. Tes is tal. Dalid is dam, is blood. And mem is mayim. So those are the 7 liquids. Those are the only liquids that can transfer. Tal is dew, which is also water, but it's also water, but it's not rainwater, it's dew. So therefore,
these are the ones that do transfer.
that's the ones that do. Any other liquid does not. So therefore, if you decided to use orange juice and mix it together with flour, tuma cannot be transferred. Your cake cannot receive tuma during that process. So too, he was telling them, use eggs. If you use eggs and you mix that with your flour, the resulting bread or cake that comes from that is not going to be able to is not going to receive impurity, right? If the person who's kneading it is impure, it doesn't become impure. So that's what he told them to do. But the inhu savor, they thought, may betzoim kamar, they thought when he said may beitzim, that he said may betzoim. Sounds very similar. And so that was the first thing they made a mistake in. What's the problem there? Whoever this rabbinic scholar was must have mumbled his words and not spoken clearly, and therefore that is where the mistake happened. They also made a mistake in this. Me karmon ume piga psulin mipnei shehein me b'tzayim. So he says that. the waters that come from the river are called Carmion and the river Piga. So then they can ruin the ashes of the red heifer, right? So when we want to become cleaned from tuma, you need to take water and mix it with the ashes of the red cow, and then we sprinkle that water and ashes on people who are impure, and we purify them. But this marsh water from these rivers was not valid for the paraduma. Right? Why? Well, we're going to see in a second. V'inhu savar, they thought that when he taught them that, midalagabe chatos psili, since it was not valid for the use with the service of the paraduma, for the red cow, achshuri nami mikshri, that it also meant that it wasn't considered water as far as transferring of tuma. Velohi, but that is not true. Hasim was a different halacha altogether. Hasim linyan chatos ba'inan mayim chayim. The requirement when it comes to the paraduma is that the Torah says you need live spring water. Marsh water, which is settled, is not going to be acceptable for the performance of the paraduma. But it is water. Hacha achshuri called to machshiri. When it comes to regular water, any water can transfer tuma. So as far as transferring, they did not realize that the law pertaining to the red cow and the law pertaining to tuma were not the same laws. They just thought, I guess, it's not water as far as that law is concerned. It's not water as far as that law is concerned. And they made a mistake. So, Tana, they learned, Be'osa Shah Gazru, they made an official rule when they heard that some rabbi came through and he taught them things. The rabbi wasn't wrong, but the people misunderstood what it was that he was telling them. Talmud, a student, Al Yora Ela Imke Notu Rishus Me Rabbo. A student cannot become a Torah teacher until he asks permission from his Rebbe. Why? Because the Rebbe's got a responsibility not only to know whether this person knows halacha, but if he knows how to teach. Does he speak clearly? Does he explain his arguments well? And this fellow obviously was either not good at speaking clearly or explaining the rationale behind the laws. So therefore, you've got to, make sure that those things, that's part of your rabbinic training, has to be that.
There's a Mishnah like that. The Rabbi must
be clear. Yes.
There's a Mishnah like that, right?
There is a Mishnah that says that you should always speak shortly and explain very well. Yeah. Tanchum Breder Rav Yami Ikla Lechaser. So Tanchum, the son of Rabbi Ami, went to. I lost my place. Tanchum Breder Rav Yami Ikla Lechaser. So he went to. He went to a place called, he says it's Cheser, not Chaser, Cheser. Darash Luhu, he taught his followers, Mutter liltos chitin bepesach. You're allowed to soak wheat kernels in water on Pesach, right? Because the problem is that once you get it wet, so then it can start turning to chametz, so you don't want that. He said that you're allowed to soak them. Amru lo, they said to him, Lav Rebbe, money demin tzur ikahacha. Was Rebbe money from Tzur? He traveled through here and he taught us Vitani. He taught us a brisa. Talmud al yore halacha b'makom rabo. So he says, they asked him, your Rebbe is here. Right? And we learned that you can't teach a halacha if your Rebbe's here. Why are you teaching us the halacha if your Rebbe's here? You're not allowed to teach if your Rebbe's here unless there's a distance between you and your Rebbe of 3 parsos. Right? It's disrespectful. So, Keneged Machane Yisrael. Because why? Where do we get these 3 parcels from? Because the Jewish camp in the desert was 3 parcels long. Was a big, wide space of 3 parcels. Moshe Rabbeinu was in the camp. And Yisro comes along and he sees that everybody keeps coming to Moshe in order to ask all their questions. Well, why? The answer is because the whole camp was not far enough away to go to anybody else. Until Yisro established that we're going to create the system of courts so that not all questions come to Moshe. But otherwise, without permission, they weren't allowed to go to anybody but Moshe to ask a question. So too, this is the halacha that a student can never teach any halachos if his Rebbe is in the city. So Amar Lahu, so he said back to them, Lava Datai, he says, I didn't know my Rebbe was here. So, oops, keep quiet. I'm not going to say anything anymore. Reb Chia Chazi Lahu Gaver, Reb Chia saw a certain fellow, Dahava Kaiba Beis HaKvaros. He saw the guy was in a graveyard. Amar Le, Lav Ben Ish Ploni Kohenata, what are you doing in a graveyard? Aren't you so-and-so's son? And he's a Kohen. You shouldn't be in a graveyard. Amar Le, he said back to him, in. He says, yeah, Avua Dahu Gavra, my father was Gava Einaim Haya. He was somebody who just chased after his eyes, right? Whatever he wanted, he took. Nasan Einav Begrusha, he married a divorced lady. vechilulo, and now I am a chalal. A chalal is the offspring of a kohen from a divorced woman, and the halacha is that person does not have the halachos of a kohen. So therefore, he says that's what I'm doing here in this basic faros. Okay, pshita lepalga. So it's a clear halacha. Right, so if he gets permission for half, right? Let's say he only gets permission for some types of rules. That we said that's fine, right? Because we had the example of Rav before that he was, right? So hakamar b'demahani, we said that was fine. Al tanai mai. What if the permission is on condition? Let's say you get a conditional permission to teach. Does that work? So Tosh, like for example, he says, I'll give you permission that you could be a Rebbe for 2 years, and then you got to come back and tell me how, and we have to see whether we can extend it. Can you have conditional licensure? Right? So the Amar le Rabbi Yochanan the Rav Shaman. Rabbi Yochanan said to Rav Shaman, Harei atav birshuseinu ad shetavo etzleinu. You have permission to judge until you come back and see us. Right? I guess he was giving him permission, and then when you come back, so the answer is yes. You can make it conditional, right? You don't have to give somebody for life or not. You can see if you want to be able to. You can have recertification, right? And they have the licensure tests every once in a while to be able to make sure that you evaluate your court cases, see how you're doing. Gufa. Let's go back over something we discussed before. Shmuel says, Beis shadano dinei hemdim el shenikra beis din chatzaf. We had said before that Shmuel was of the opinion that if two judges got together and they judged a court case, so their court case is valid. This was according to the opinion that said that all you need is one judge, right? So it works, but that's based in that has chutzpah because you didn't follow what the Chacham said that you're supposed to have three people. Yosef Rav Nachman v'kamer l'hoshmaisa. Rav Nachman was sitting and he was teaching this teaching. Eisvei Rava l'Rav Nachman. So Rava asked Rav Nachman the following question: Afiyu shnaim mizachin o shnaim mechayvin ve'echad omer eni yodea yosifu hadayanin. So he says, if two of them say you are that you're what do you call it that you win the court case, and two people say, or two people say that you lose the court case. So then is that like two people and one person says I don't know, right? Is the third person out of the court, and now that's considered a beis din chatzuf? I mean, even if he had voted the other way, he would have been overruled. But he's saying, I don't know, I'm abstaining. So if it's 2-0 with one abstention, is that a beis din chatzuf? That's what he's asking him, right? Is that considered beis din chatzuf? So he says, Shani Hosam, he says, so he says, Echad Omer, one says, Einu Yodea, Yosifu HaDayanin, so you have to add on more judges. So the question that he's asking is, why do you have to add on another judge? Right? If the court case was 2-0 and the guy abstains, so the halacha is you add on another judge. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's no worse than if they had two people altogether. And you're right, two people is not ideal, but it works. So 2-0, you wish the guy would have voted, but he didn't. So the court case should be valid. Why do you have to add more judges? So the answer is Shani Hasam. That's different. Because Demikara Dasa Detlosa Yasivi. Hachalava Data Detlosa Yasivi. If you started the court case with 3 judges, so then you've got to finish with 3 judges. That's why. So if you started with 3 judges and one guy abstains, you got to add another judge. Because the 3 guys, the people who came to court said, I want 3 judges. Right? What difference does it make? If he's going to vote the other way, he's going to get overruled anyway. The answer is because if one guy who said the other way was on the court, he might have been able to convince another judge of his perspective. The fact that one guy mailed it in and didn't give an opinion might have slanted the whole court case. So therefore, if 3 people were supposed to be on the court and you've only got 2 that actually vote, so then you're right, you got to add more judges, do it again. But if there were 2 in the first place, that's why the court case works. Okay, Eisvei Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. So here's the question. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Hadin b'shlosha upshara b'shnayim. That a court case requires 3 judges. If you are going to make a pshara is a, what's the word in English? He's making an agreement, right? You're coming to
Like a settlement.
A settlement, that's right. Yeah, it's like a settlement, right? Between the two. So all you need is two. V'yafa koach pshara mikoach hadin, and a pshara, right? The settlement is better than a legal argument. Sheshnayim shadanu b'alei dinin yicholun lachzorim. Because if you had two people who were in a court case, they could say this court case is not good, and they could refuse to accept the judgment. But if two people make a settlement, ein b'alei dinin yicholun lachzorim, and they cannot go back on it. Now the question is, what do you mean if two people make a court case, you can go back? We just said if two people make a court case, the court case is valid, it's just based in chatzuf. So is it valid or is it not? Maybe the answer is, there's an argument here. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says two people are good and the Rabbanan are arguing with him. Rabbi Avo says no. Everybody agrees that if there are two people who make a court case, the court case is not valid. So how are you going to explain what we were saying here, that if they judge this case, it's valid, except that it's based in chatzuf? How are you explaining that? So the answer is, Gavra Karamis. What? You're going to say, you have two different opinions here. One guy says, nobody disputes it. Obviously somebody else says there is a dispute. So therefore, this Shmuel says that two judges are acceptable, and Rabbi Avo says, no, two judges are not acceptable. What are they arguing about? They're most likely arguing about whether we are doing, whether we're able to presume that there's a law that you need three judges by monetary cases, right? According to the opinion that says we only need one, theoretically two would be fine. According to the opinion that said three is a Torah requirement, two is never going to be fine. So that's what's going on. Gufa. Okay, so let's talk about something that we already mentioned again. I'm a Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo says, Shnaim shadanu dinim mamnis. If two people got together and they made a court case and relating to financial matters, l'divrei hakol ein dinehem din. According to everybody, according to this opinion, everybody says their court case is not valid. Only two judges, not going to work. Eisvei Rabbi Abba l'Rabbi Avo. So Rabbi Abba says to Rabbi Avo, Donas hadin v'zikes hachayev v'chayeves hazakai. Let's say they made a judgment. Okay, they're finished, and they got the ruling backwards. The person who was supposed to be chayev, the person who was supposed to be obligated, won the case. The person who was supposed to win the case lost the case. Timei asatohor. Let's say they were judging whether something is pure or impure. They said it was pure, it was impure. Tiher is a tamei. He made something pure, it was impure. Masha asa asui. What they decided to do is done. Court case is finished. That's it. Can't go back. But the judge is responsible for paying what damage they caused. So, how is that circumstance, right? How does this work? If this is a case of donis hadin, which sounds like an individual person. One person is making a court case. Rabbi Avo, you said that if less than three people make a court case, the court case is not valid. This sounds like the court case is valid. It's just that the judge has to pay the money back because he didn't have permission to do it, right? So why is it valid? So the answer is, what are we dealing here? De kibluhu alayhu. The answer is, the litigants accepted this fellow as their judge, right? They accepted him as their judge, hence he was judging, and they were obligated, like it's almost like binding arbitration, right? They agreed to it. So, if they agreed to it, well, if they agreed to it and they signed the waiver and they were following whatever the judge said, then why does the judge have to pay? So the answer is, Amruleh, because what the instruction they gave to the judge was, Daint lanu din. Torah. Make a Torah judgment for us. That was the instruction. So basically, they trusted the one guy. But the condition was that it was going to be a halacha that follows the Torah. When they found out that the fellow made a mistake, then they're saying, no, that wasn't what we hired you to do. Hence, you've got to pay. Amar Rav Safra, does it make sense? Rav Safra says, L'Rabbi Abba, Detal b'mai. Now let's discuss under what circumstance this mistake occurs. What mistake are we talking about that you can go to a judge and get him to pay you back? Let's say he makes a mistake. The Mishnah says, like we've been reading these Mishnayos, the Mishnah says that this person's supposed to win, this is not supposed to win, this contract is valid, that contract's not valid, and the person made a mistake simply because he did not know the halacha. So, V'amar Rav Sheshes Amar Rav, Ta'a b'davar Mishnah, if some rabbi makes a mistake in the halacha, the simple halacha, and it's written in a Mishnah, choser. So then the halacha is not valid, that court case is not valid, that everything gets reversed. So that's not the kind of mistake we're talking about, because otherwise the court case would be invalidated. So the answer is, hadas. He must have made a mistake in application, in his logical decision making. That's where the mistake was. So, Hechi Dami b'shikol hadas. What is the circumstance of shikol hadas? What's the decision that he had to make? Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa explains like this: Kigon trei tanai. Let's say there's an argument, right? There's two opinions. We have a Mishnah. Mishnah says this guy says this guy says this. If the Mishnah said what the halach is, obviously he's got to follow that. But now the Mishnah says two different viewpoints. Utrei amori depligia hadadi. Now, more so. Then we had the Gemara level. On the Gemara level, some rabbis said the halacha was like this fellow, and some rabbis the halacha was like this fellow. V'lo itmar hilchasa lo kamar v'lo kamar. And there's no place where it's written anywhere that the halacha follows one opinion or the other opinion. Like, for example, when it comes to Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, we know we're going to follow Beis Hillel. That's a done deal. We already know that that's the case, except for certain circumstances. This argument, it was not written anywhere. Like we had, for example, at the end of the Gemara, we talked about the halacha is always like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, except in 3 cases. So that's where the halacha is written. Sometimes the Mishnah gives 2 opinions, and it's not clear who the halacha is like. Okay, so that's what happened. However, in the world of yeshivas, everybody was following one of the opinions at this point. And he went, this guy judged the case according to the other opinion. Okay, that is Hainu Shikol Hadas. That's the problem of Shikol Hadas. He is mistaken. He should not have judged according to the other opinion, but there was never a pronouncement that says that other opinion is invalid. Therefore, the court case is valid. He's just in the wrong. So therefore, he has to pay. Lema Kitanai. Okay, so now let's explore the following disputes. Bitsua bishlosha divrei Rabbi Meir. When you're going to make a peace agreement, a settlement, right? There's a word for that I'm not thinking, but we're going to keep using settlement as a good word.
It is a
right?
compromise.
Compromise, thank you, that's a good word. The compromise opinion. We're going to make a compromise. 2 people come to court, we're going to make a compromise. So Rabbi Meir says you need 3 judges. You only need 1. One guy can negotiate the settlement on behalf of the 2 sides. You need 1 mediator. Savrua dekuli yamamakshina pshara ledin. We thought that in the first place, what's this argument about? Everybody says that the judge who's making a compromise is basically a judge. It's the same thing as a judge. My love b'hakamiflagi. In that sense, what's the argument about whether you need 1 or 3? Demar savar din b'shlosha. This is the same old argument we've been discussing all along. One opinion says you need 3 members of a court. Umar savar din b'shnayim. And the other one says 2 people is sufficient, or even 1, right? You don't need 3. So, and why does he say 2? Because 2 is when you have 2 people in your compromise agreement, then at the end of your compromise, you write up a document that indicates what your compromise was, and you have 2 witnesses who sign it and say this was the compromise, and it's set. So that's the argument between. So Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim are arguing and saying, no, it's a judgment case. And so therefore the question is whether you need 3 judges or 1 judge. That's the question. The answer is no, but that's not really what the argument is about. Everyone agrees you need 3 judges. Right? Both Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. This is what the argument is really about. One says that a compromise is basically a court case. The other says a compromise is not a court case. A compromise is arbitration, and it is not similar to a court case. So lema tlasa tanai. Let's say there's lema tlasa tanai bipshara. So if let's say there's 3 different opinions. Right, because we just counted up all the different opinions that we say. Demar Savar B'Shlosha. Rabbi Meir says that you need 3. Omar Savar B'Shnayim. Then we had just quoted an opinion that said that you need 2. Umar Savar B'Yachid. And then another opinion in this brisa was that you only need 1 person. So you got really 3 viewpoints. Amar Ravacha Braid Ravika. So Ravacha, the son of Ravika, says V'Tamer of Yemar Bar Shamaya. Some said it was Rabbi Yemar Bar Shamaya said that no, it's really 2 different opinions, just 2 opinions. He says, because Man de Omer Trey, the one who says that you need 2 people to do the mediation, Afilu chad nami. Even one would be sufficient for the mediation. Vayda kamar trey. The only reason, as we said, that you need two is because kihechi dilahavi sadi is so that when the arbitration is done, you'll have witnesses to sign the document. Just good advice. But really, a mediation is simply a peacemaker. Okay? Amar Rav Ashi, Shma mina, Pshara ina tzricha kinyan. You see from here that Pshara does not require any sort of an acquisition, right? In other words, at the end of the deal, sometimes when we have a sale of some kind or an agreement between two parties, you need to have somebody say, well, I officially raised your item in order to verify that I'm accepting your part, right? But that's not necessary. Why? Because if it was necessary, laman damar tzricha tlosa lamali. Why would there be somebody who says that you need three? Why would you need a beis din? Right? Because tiski betray velikni mine. If a beis din is necessary, it's because it's a real court case. Well, if I, at the end of my compromise, was making a kinyan, it would be the same thing as any other land sale or any other transaction. I go to the store, I don't need a beis din to buy my groceries. Right? So therefore, why would I need a beis din? The answer is, you need a beis din because it's not like when I'm buying my groceries. I'm buying my groceries, I give you money and I take my item. It's mine, right? So that's a transaction. Here, there's no transaction when we come to a compromise. A compromise is just saying, oh, okay, this is how we're going to do things. So one side says, that requires a court. The other side says, no, it's just an agreement amongst people. The halacha is, pshar tzricha kinyan, that no, in fact, a compromise should have such an agreement, because that way you are establishing that whatever was before is done. This is now the new agreement, and we're accepting it. So we're going to just make sure that we turn the page before we end. Tana Rabbana, rabbis learn, Kashem Shadin Bishlosha, just like a court case is with three, Kach Bitsua Bishlosha, so too, when it comes to a compromise, you need three judges. Nigmar Hadin, once the court case is completed, you can't say, okay, now, do you guys want to make a compromise after the court case is finished? No. Once the court case is done, that's the end of the court case. You cannot now go back and say, actually, I'd like to compromise now, right? There's no compromise after the court case is done. Okay, it's a good place to stop.
Thank you.
I would imagine that